All right, good. So good evening, everybody. Dan Gordon from Flash Fire here. Thank you all for joining me. We got about 60 people on right now, but we sold out registrations. So I know some guys sign up earlier and can't make it. But absolutely, I think it's maybe the second time we've sold out. So that's awesome. Obviously, this is a topic of interest. So you didn't come here to hear me talk. So I will do the quick introduction and we'll get on to it. This is our third of five seminars. The other one for the winter, the others are located on our YouTube page or website. The fourth one's going to be on February 11th. That's going to be Mike Cronick from I forget what his title is, Western Wildfire Division Manager. So we're going to talk about basically tonight, but wildfires, right? Brush fires, what we had this fall. And then our final one is going to be February 24th, high point or high risk. Can be a little more technical on rope rescue and specifically using the aerial or tower ladder, whether it be for a rope rescue, lifting something, those types of things, the forces, physics, all that stuff. So those are the next two ones. Registrations go live a week before they start. A couple questions tonight, that were texted to me. When you register, you get an email. So if you don't get that email, check your spam, check your junk. If it didn't come there, let me know. Because it's tough to kind of run it last minute up here, obviously. Pin myself so you see it. All right, so with me tonight, very fortunate that I was able to, or you guys were able to find a night that we could all kind of come together. Obviously, doing a couple of juggling acts on your ends. So we'll have Cal Brennan, Joe McNellis, Greg Sanfinandre, and Scott Pelletier. Rather than have you all introduce yourselves right now, I'm going to have you do that when you start talking kind of for your part, just to make it easier on everybody. So basically, this obviously came about from the floods in August of this year, August 18th, I believe. And the way that we're going to kind of run tonight, I'm going to start on the micro level and work our way out to the more the macro level. I got to get a hat. This is pretty bad. I got to shave this head. This is ridiculous. Or turn my lights off. But so we're going to start on the micro level with a couple of specific rescues that happened both in Oxford and Monroe. And then we're going to start to grow out from there to kind of like the operations level in Monroe and then the incident command level in Monroe. And then we will switch back to Oxford for Chief Pelletier on incident command as like the EOC operations. I believe he was in the EOC. And so kind of really look at this from not just, all right, I walked here, I rescued this person here, but when this happens again, and even if it's not flooding, if it's something else, how do we set ourselves up for success with regards to the command level structure, multiple calls at the same time, mutual aid, and things like that? So I'm going to give a quick synopsis on kind of the day, and then I'll start turning it over to our speakers. So on Sunday, August 18th, 2024, the Monroe and Oxford area was hit with what only can be described as a deluge of rain. Flash flood warnings were issued for 1 to 2 inches of rain per hour. Over the course of 6 to 8 hours, approximately 16 inches of rain fell in this area, qualifying this as a once in a 1,000-year storm. 30 state roads were closed, 5 train lines delayed or closed temporarily. Now, the Stevenson Dam remains structurally sound and was estimated to have only been forced to withstand approximately 5% of its structural capacity of water flow. Had the Stevenson Dam not withstood the pressure, certainly there would have been a tremendous amount of damage downstream from where the Stevenson Dam was. Total damage was estimated, and this was a week after, so it could have changed. The article I took this from was estimated at about $1 billion. 2 people lost their lives. Some of the resources which were in attendance, I'll call it attendance, at these various incidents will be the 3 Monroe fire departments, so Stepney, Stevenson, and Monroe, Long Hill Fire from Trumbull, Bridgeport Fire, Norwalk Fire, Sandy Hook Fire, Oxford Fire, and Beacon Falls. If I forgot any departments, let me know. Bottom line is, this was crazy, right? It was an area that, while it does flood, has never seen anything like this. I'm going to pull up a little bit of the map for those of you that are not super familiar with the area that we're talking about. Um, pull this up and share my screen. All right, so this is Route 34 in Monroe. This is the Stevenson Dam right here. This is the Monroe boat ramp. Many of you that are local know the Lake Zor Drive-In. So this area was completely cut off right where my mouse is. And this becomes important because if Monroe and Oxford wanted to share any resources, this was impassable completely. There was no workaround at that point. So that obviously became an issue. Uh, Pull up this other one. All right, so this is kind of an overhead satellite view. This is looking a little bit towards the left. So over here is kind of where the Stevenson Dam is. You can see the STE there. That's the Stevenson Dam. And one thing to keep in mind, you can see Riverside Volunteer Fire Company here. That's one of the Oxford departments. So they're very close to Monroe. And in a normal working day, they can get across to Monroe in probably a couple minutes. But as I said, that whole area was blocked. So this is Route 111 coming down here. And then the split to 34 towards this is towards New Haven, Derby, Seymour, that area, and this would be towards Newtown, 84, that area. So when we talk about the first rescue, this is where a lot of that stuff occurred, and a lot of the major structural road damage and those types of things were up this way. So I'll have these pictures available if we want to come back to this. And then we can get into that. And there was, I'm sure someone already posted, Botsford got relocated. Botsford was in as well. So again, if I forgot any departments or missed them, I apologize. So without further ado, we're going to start at, like I said, at the micro level. So if you can pull your uh, screen up, I'm going to share kind of the picture of your rescue and you can kind of walk us through how that went. Are you there?
Yep, I'm
All
here.
right. Can you see the picture of the aerial and stuff?
Yes, yeah,
Okay.
that's us going out initially.
So I have that picture and then I have this. So actually I'll pull this up. This is a view of it, I guess, when you're baby
Hold
shower,
on, Luna.
right?
Yep, that's normal every day.
So just take us from the beginning. Nothing crazy. Just take it from the beginning. What happened?
Yeah, so as it was out there, I'm a member of Oxford and Beacon Falls. So Oxford got dispatched initially for their first water rescue. I started heading over for that call, and I could not make it to Oxford. I tried two different ways. Um, Listening to radio traffic, I knew it was definitely a crazy situation. Um, So I went back to Beacon Falls. There was nothing I was going to do. I literally couldn't get to any of the calls. From there, we started responding to some of our own calls, and then we got pulled into Naugatuck to do some rescues. After that, our ambulance, we kind of regrouped back at the firehouse, and our ambulance early on got pulled for mutual aid into Oxford. They couldn't access, many different parts of the town. So kind of long story short, on the backside, our ambulance was dispatched to a call in the area of the Brookside Inn. And after trying to get to that initial call, knowing that was already underwater, I told them they weren't going to be able to make it. Um, so they got as far as they could, which was basically where that first picture is. And then there was a daughter out there that flagged down our ambulance company saying that her mother was in the house. Um, And then from there, we got information that there was 19 people in the restaurant.
So this is the
18 or 19.
initial house you're talking about?
Correct. Yep.
Okay.
So our ambulance relayed that back that there were several people stuck. And knowing what was kind of going on there, we basically said, there's nothing really we're going to do. And Oxford can't get to this at this point, obviously, due to 67 completely underwater. So some time went by, maybe a half hour, 45 minutes, and they called back to the firehouse and they were like, listen, this is getting really bad. The building looks like it's starting to become really unstable. Cars, large objects bouncing off the structure. The water keeping rising up to um, almost the second floor of that house now. He's like, "Can somebody just come take a ride?" So I went over. They sent us some pictures. It still looked like we weren't going to be able to do anything. Took a ride over there.
So this is
And
real quick. This is just north of that area, right? So this is the Brookside Inn this is the restaurant we're talking about. So
correct.
I believe it would
All
be
of
the
that was
central
underwater.
river. So
Yep,
all of this was underwater.
several feet of water.
Okay.
Uh, then it was kind of curving back right around those buildings to go back into where the actual Little River actually
Right.
runs.
Okay.
Um, so at that point, I went over, met the ambulance crew, and I thought our ladder truck was going to reach. So I called Chief Pelletier and I said, "Hey, this is what we got going on. Just looking for permission. I think I have a plan." He said, "Yeah, do whatever you got to do." So we dispatched our assignment, our water rescue trailer, our boat, our ladder truck, and our rescue truck over. Um, we backed the truck down the road, and we set up the aerial, kind of the turntable, right in line with that first window. Um, so there's a power, yeah, yep. So that telephone line, that telephone pole, and that secondary line, right after we called for the initial assignment, like, okay, if we put the turntable here, we'll be able to reach this. The power line got hit by a car, or the telephone pole got hit by a car and then strang that secondary right across the window. And I was like, well, there goes that plan. Um, so by the time the ladder got there, something else struck the pole and it set that wire down a little bit longer. Um, we asked for the grid to be shut down. We don't believe that ever happened at least in a timely fashion. Um, but yeah, long story short, we backed the truck down the block. We When I initially got there, I marked the level of water on 67 with a nearby tree branch. In probably 5 minutes, the water rose past that at least 10 feet. So I still knew that the water was rising. Um, it's an establishment that we frequent, on a regular basis. So I kind of knew how high the water was up on that other building. The wall was starting to be compromised on the backside. And when we were talking about large objects, 1,000-pound propane tanks, cars, there was a video of this filmed by somebody.
I have it. I'll play it when we get to that point.
Yeah. So just massive amounts of debris coming down. So we backed the turntable in line with that window, which was as far as we can go back without operating in the actual water. There was water kind of starting to rise up to our right outrigger. Um, so we knew the water was still rising, and we were concerned about getting a little more farther to the right because we were seeing the erosion of the parking lot and the roadway. So this is where we felt comfortable, for stabilization to set up the aerial. Um, so as soon as they pulled the e-brake on that, I jumped up on the turntable. They set the outriggers. We actually power vented that window. And then Christian, initially, that's him in that picture. Christian went out and we actually had phone contact with her. Her daughter was in the street watching all this. I think that's actually where the video came from. So I told her, back away from the window. Once you hear the smashing stop, come back into that room. So she met us in that room. Christian went out, got in the house, made contact with her. Then I went out right after Christian. There was a dog and then one occupant in there. So he was packaging the dog in this backpack thing that she had. And then I grabbed her. We escorted her over the ladder, and then Christian came with the canine. Um,
But you had
so
you had 19 people there, right?
no, so this is the
Oh,
one. There's only one female in this.
okay.
So on our way back, I was about 3/4 of the way back, and I looked upstream, and there was this very large dumpster heading down. Um, and it appeared to us that it was going to strike the ladder. And at this point, there was really nothing we were going to do because we were slightly through the window when we power vented it. Um, so at the last second, you said you have a video of that?
Yeah, I thought so. If not, as you talk, I will find it.
Yeah. So the dumpster near miss, it came pretty damn close to one of the, the outriggers, at least it seemed. And then due to the current, kind of ripped to the right, and then it went down into the part of the erosion. You'll see kind of like it dipped down and pop back up. Um,
This is what you're talking about, right?
yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, that's us escorting her across, and then there's a dumpster coming by.
So this is the first house. This isn't the main Brookside Inn.
Correct. Yep.
Okay.
This is just to the on the B side of it. So once we effected that rescue, the 19 people were in the restaurant. So the aerial operator retracted, and we were swinging across. Um, there was a pretty strong looking dude on the porch. There's a kind of raw iron fence that was encompassing the staircase and a little balcony there. So we yelled to him, "Hey, start yanking on the railing." He was able to break the anchors free. Because other than that, we wouldn't be able to make that balcony. So that's a 107-foot Pierce Ascendant single axle truck. Um, we were completely maxed out when we swung to the right and extended to get onto the balcony. We really couldn't have went any farther back, and the water was basically at the back of the truck at that point. So from that, we had phone contact. We knew the bartender that was working. So once we had the aerial in position, she had some people on the second floor that she gathered, and we told her to go, everybody out in the balcony. So it was a very quick plan. We thought about a lot of variables. The variable that we didn't think about, and which hit me as soon as we had the first victim on the ladder, was we were we were evacuating a bar after them being in there for stranded for several hours. So there were several impaired people, intoxicated people. So that was a variable that we really didn't think about until we were in the midst of it. So we had one lady be slightly combative with me, and then she ended up actually slipping and going through the rungs. She didn't fall through the rungs. The rung in the waterway caught her. And then the only other person that we had difficulty there was an elderly person that we put aside. All the able to ambulate people. We were just getting them across the ladder as quick as we could. Basically made a bridge. And then the last person, elderly female, we had to put in a Stokes basket, and we bring her down the rails to the turntable and then passed her down that way.
Wow. I didn't find the video of the dumpster coming by. I know I've seen it, but the ones I saw on YouTube didn't have it. So
Yeah, it was. I think it was like a 15-yard dumpster or something like
yeah.
that. It was big, but so in hindsight, if we went to Brookside first versus this house, it would have definitely hit the aerial because we were very low to the water when we had to stretch out. So what that would have done, who knows? But that's basically the synopsis of that.
Yeah. I mean, it was down and dirty, did what you had to do. One of the themes I'm going to ask about tonight is in just something that we'll talk about towards the end is PPE. So, and not on the safety aspect, but everyone has different stuff for water. So, what were your guys in?
So we're part of a Swiftwater rescue team. So we had our Swiftwater life jackets on.
Okay.
The one thing that we kind of critiqued ourselves on was we didn't put any of the victims in a PFD. The first one, definitely we had a spare. The 19 people, it would have delayed operation. So we were I had an arm on everybody. We were kind of escorting through the aerial. So that's something we talked about. But due to what we heard going on in town of how structurally unsound some of these buildings were becoming. Several vehicles were striking these buildings. Logs actually caved in the front door of there during our operations. So it was a time sensitive manner. So we it's
Yeah.
kind of like risk versus rewards
Mhm.
type of thing. Even if somebody went in this type of water condition in a life jacket, I honestly don't think it would have changed their outcome. But it's something that we talked about. If we're ever in the situation again, it probably wouldn't hurt to have some sort of provisions for that.
But there was no I mean, obviously maybe concern, but there was no point where you were really worried about the outriggers or the roadway giving way.
We were unsure where that line, because there were several feet of water. So we kind of set up where we were able to see, which ended up getting covered with water. We saw the massive erosion probably 10 feet from where we were. So we weren't sure on,
Right.
um, we couldn't really tell exactly what was starting to become unsound. Going back the next day, we were still very much in the clear, but it was pretty uncertain at the
Mhm.
time.
Okay. Very good. If anyone has any questions, throw them in the chat window. Like I said, I'm going to keep tonight moving because we have a lot of different aspects that we want to cover. So, um, thank you very much, Cal. If anyone puts a question up there, we need to come back and you're still on, I'll do that. You might be getting off. So I'm going to turn it over to the Stevenson side of things, Stevenson area of Monroe, where we had a conjunction of Monroe, Stepney, Stevenson initially, and then Sandy Hook, Botsford, as well as multiple mutual aids. So Joe McNellis, thanks for joining. I also do see you on Jeff Giordano from Stevenson. So if you're there and you just want, I know you were on scene as well. But I'm going to start with Joe. So um, we talked today a little bit just about what you were planning on, talking about, and we were on the same page. So you get called out. What was the first call? I mean, we knew it was raining, right? There was no surprise there. So you get a call, and we get, as everyone here does, you get calls all the time, water in the basement, water affecting electrical panels. When did you know that this was going to be different, and what were some of those initial calls that you got?
So
And
initially,
I'm sorry, introduce yourself as well, just background of who you are in this. And
hello everybody. I'm Joe McNellis. I am Deputy Chief of Monroe Fire, Lieutenant Bridgeport Fire as well. But like Dan said, it happened very fast. We got a lot of rain in a very short period of time, and we were actually bouncing around call to call, dealing with other stuff prior to any of the real flooding calls coming in. We had a couple of structure fire calls, lightning strikes, and MVAs and different alarms before the flooding calls. It wasn't really until Old Station House Road came in. I got there very late into that incident because I couldn't get there, but Jeff will touch on that. But everything that happened before that, we went to an adaptive response fairly quick. Um, I made it single engine for every call in the town that wasn't a structure fire or a rescue call. So essentially like boxes only. Um, and then when that we cleared the last structure fire call, and then the Old Station House Road came in. They
what
were
would it
there. They
what
get.
did it come in as anyway?
I think it came in as people trapped by flood water in a house.
Okay.
Jeff was thrown out to that. We were actually on other calls, so I cleared my squad, and they started going that direction. So after listening to that call progress, I immediately started calling mutual aid companies into the town. I called Greg LH1 direct, and I said, "Dude, can you send me a couple engines?" He goes, "What do you mean?" He had no idea what was going on. It was sunny in Trumbull, it was sunny in Shelton, and you know that's when I started calling special resources like Bridgeport. We have a mutual aid agreement with Bridgeport, and they I was on the phone with Battalion Chief Boris, and he sent me the high water truck that they have and a flat bottom boat. Now I don't know, we have no boats in Monroe other than the one Stevenson had, but I felt like we could have probably used the flat bottom in any type of flooding that was, not moving.
Mhm.
So shortly after that, we activated our townwide command, and we operate our ELC out of Station One. A Monroe officer should have been running it. We had a captain there. for a short period of time, and then you know, I couldn't get back to the firehouse. I was cut off by water, so LH1 had to run it. When the resources from Bridgeport and Norwalk, because we requested Norwalk too, somehow it got lost in translation that we bypassed Westport. It was a miscommunication with dispatch somewhere along the line, but uh, so I set up a staging area at Massac High School, and all them resources started coming into town, and they were there, a couple minutes before we put them right to work. Uh, Norwalk Fire Department came with Deputy Chief Capolo and their high water vehicle. Pete Chilla was on that. He's a scuba guy. He's got Swiftwater Tech. A couple squared away guys came right away, and I sent them right down to Giordano at Old Station House. Uh, and after all that mutual aid that came in was dispersed, I tried to get down there. We had multiple reports of people trapped in houses, and all of our calls for that were typically on the north end of town in the back roads. So, we didn't know what we were pulling up on. Companies were driving through water, coming around boulders. They encountered a lot of washed out roads. Some of the companies, Engine 10 came up from Bridgeport as well. They actually encountered a whole side of a mountain, side of a ridge rather, uh, basically a landslide. Uh, LH1 and I were in communication the entire time, and we were bouncing resources off each other.
So I'm just gonna stop you 1 minute. So
Yep.
just because not everyone obviously knows the area, so
Okay.
you can see my screen, right?
Yep.
So this is about where Monroe Station 1 is. And then this is Massac High School, and this is where the major flood area was. So this is the Stevenson Dam. So this is what held. We'll talk about what didn't hold, 34 here. But this is kind of the geographic kind of area. So about 3 miles away is where the staging was, and then I do it here, but probably another 2 or 3 miles up the road is where Monroe Center is. So just to kind of give you guys a general idea. And in terms of getting to this area, if you want to get to Stevenson, and you're in Bridgeport, you could just as easily come, Route 8 to actually it might be faster, Route 8 to 34. Had they done that, and I they didn't, so I'm not saying this, but had they done that, they would have been completely stuck and not been able to cross the dam and come and help you. So I'm kind of just thinking on my feet here, if you will, like during these incidents, giving directions and not just saying, hey, go to this address. I know we talked about that a little bit before, and you're going to touch on that as well.
Yep.
But there's multiple ways to get to these areas that are easier than others until the road's out. So
That's a great point.
Yeah, go ahead.
That's a great point. We gave them clear direction to come straight up Route 825 and come up 111. Both Norwalk, Trumbull, and Bridgeport.
So that's huge. I mean, that could have ruined your entire day if you just said, hey, come to this address, and they punch it into Google and that's it, So
communications was another challenge, and I'm going to bring that up in a minute.
Please continue. I don't want to interrupt, but go ahead.
Yep. So, eventually I was in contact with somebody from the USAR team, Connecticut USAR team, and they ended up, I think they had people on the Oxford side, and they ended up sparing, 3 or 4 members, but they got there a little late, and, the rescue was already, affected. So they already got them people out. But, a lot of the challenges we encountered in Monroe was just flooding in areas that we could not get to, either down in, little neighborhoods, flash flooding across the major routes to these areas towards the northern side of town, and any other routes that we might be able to get to. So we had landslides, we had trees into structures. At one point, we needed grid shut down. That was a challenge in confirming them that they were down. We had a very high call volume with other calls in town, and Shelton and Trumbull really took care of that stuff while Monroe units were operating, on the north side of town. Another big challenge we encountered was, obviously everybody probably heard about the water view with potentially a collapse, building collapse with 50 people trapped and flooding. That was put on social media. I got multiple phone calls and reports from that, just from one post on Facebook. Another challenge we encountered was communications with Bridgeport and Norwalk. After they go past that East Village line there and start going down the hill towards 34, UASI drops out. We didn't have many radios to give out.
What's
So that was
UASI? Back up.
huh
Back up. What's UASI?
the actual abbreviation for it.
Oh no, what I mean it's honestly I don't even know. What you mean the
Oh,
radios give out or
yeah, it's a separate radio that we carry that is like it's regional for mutual aids.
okay. No,
Okay,
I haven't been
sorry.
involved in a while, so yeah, I mean I didn't
I'm not a comms guy, so
yeah.
somebody else could tell you what UASI actually stands for.
No, not what it stands for. What is it? So it's the
Yeah,
mutual aid radio. So you give them a radio, but now they're coming down the hill and it doesn't work
yeah,
there.
it's like a state radio. It's got all kinds of regions on it and different TAC channels and all that stuff. So, but that at the bottom of that hill is a dead zone. So we couldn't talk to Norwalk or anybody after they reached a certain point. And when Bridgeport was operating beyond Massac, we couldn't really talk to them either until we gave them Monroe radios, and that was an overlook on my part. And so
So let's just again kind of draw this out so everyone watching can see. This is the water. I'm looking for word right here. So this is the water view right here. So this is 111 where we come down. You've got left and right 34. This is where old stagecoach the rescues were happening. This is the water view, which is a huge venue area, and had a report of people building collapse with people trapped. Obviously, that was not the case. However, there was still, I have a good picture of it. Sorry, I'm going to go through these quick. Where is it? All right, I'll find it later. So that was the water view where the report of people were trapped. And I saw the same thing and said, what the hell is going on? I realized I was just not sharing my screen. So give me a minute. I apologize. Yes. All right. You can see it now, right?
yep,
All right. So this is the water view. This is where the sinkhole was located. I'm going to back up and go back to the other one. Here. So this is the water view, the area we talked about. This was the major flooding area of the house that the entrapment that they're talking about. So again, just and this is the view of this is the washout that they were talking about. So when they said when there was a report of um, when there was a report of the building collapsed, this is what occurred very adjacent to the building that really got that rumor going, if you will, right?
yep.
So just good things to again talking about that. I see some guys putting comments. I'm going to look at them in a minute, and I'll turn it. Joe, continue on. So
Okay. One of the other challenges that we encounter, like you guys talked about PPE, what we had on. My guys only had Mustang suits and PFDs. We're in no shape, way, or form, uh, you know, capable of handling any type of swift water like that. And that was a big task for us. So, again, going back to like the resources I called in the town, I backfilled the town pretty quick. I kind of got greedy. I was calling everybody for two companies. I actually asked LH1 for two engines, but he sent me an engine and a truck. And Shelton gave me two engines. Bridgeport gave me an engine, a high water truck, and a battalion chief. Norwalk gave me a high water vehicle and personnel. Trumbull gave me a PD, MRAP, and I also called for once that old station house road was progressing, and they weren't affecting the rescue with the assets they had there. I started calling for any type of big machine, the biggest excavators we can get our hands on. I was calling for DPW to bring those that way. Two of them ended up there. I think they had a lull there. Jeff Giordano will touch base on on all that stuff because he was there most of the time. They had a lull and a couple excavators, but we had other bigger excavators staged, ready to go if need be. Um, but I think my main takeaways from Monroe, for this whole incident was that we had a storm SOG at the time. We updated it quite a bit, and it incorporates any type of rescue asset in our region and other regions around us, so that we know what we have and what we could call. Uh, the other thing we really thought about was having a department member, or a PIO office, public information officer, to address the public on social media and or monitor it to debunk any potential reports that may cause panic or any type of hysteria. Uh, the need we were, I think we had just finalized our mutual aid agreement with Bridgeport before this happened. Around that time, the need for mutual aid agreements for specialized and technical rescue type calls for paid or departments that are trained in it around us is imperative. I think a lot of smaller volley outfits need to look at that. Uh, the need to open up our own townwide EOC, which is at the PD. Like, we fight for that, but it doesn't really happen. So we took it upon ourselves to outfit our firehouse to be able to handle any type of big incident out of our firehouse. Uh, and we did a serious reevaluation of gear and PPE, that we could benefit from if something like this should ever happen again. I think the most noteworthy call in Monroe was that old Station House Road at the new Town Monroe line. Uh, and I think, given the assets and the amount of water and the escalating situation at that scene, I think everybody that was assigned to that scene did a very good job. Uh, the rescue was successful. There was no casualties. I know other towns had some casualties, but I think it was a blessing in disguise that this storm was so isolated in compared to the size of the state. It was a small area, right? Uh, I think it could have been a lot worse. And yeah, that's pretty much my take on it all.
Well, if you want to stick around for a minute or two, I'm gonna Jeff, if you're on and you want to come in, then you can kind of talk about the old Stagecoach Road one a little bit as well. I see you just
Sure.
unmuted yourself. I'm also
Yeah.
learning. I'm also learning how many firemen are complete radio nerds, because you guys are putting stuff up here on this chat that is well beyond my. Obviously, next year we need to have a seminar on all these radio. I know I did one a couple years ago, but I mean, I'm going to read some of these later, but some of these acronyms and descriptions are things I've never heard in my life before. So, which just shows, I mean, there's a lot to learn when it comes to communications. We always say the generic word, oh, we got to, communication's so key. And yet I bet a lot of us don't know all of this stuff. So, I'll get to that in a little bit. Jeff, if you want to come on, we'll keep it to like 10 minutes or so. Old
I'll
Stagecoach
try and keep
Road
it short.
specifically. Go ahead.
Okay. I'm Jeff Giordano, Deputy Chief of Stevenson. I was probably the third person there because I made a wrong turn. The incident itself. Can you bring the map up?
Yeah.
Right. One thing I want to talk about, and can you zoom it to the intersection of 34?
Now you're getting
if you,
complicated. I'll give it a
well,
shot.
okay.
No.
Yeah, just make it big. Yeah, right there. You can see there's a train line there and there's a bridge. And very quickly, we got isolated from multiple directions. Or actually, let's take a quick step back. Right, the call came in as water, people stuck inside the house, can't get out. It had been raining for a few hours. On my drive there was a significant amount of water on the road. I was only a few moments away, so I updated. They had asked me if I wanted additional resources. At that point, I was close enough that we went to go evaluate first. We did realize that we needed additional resources fairly quickly. The challenge we had was just below where it says Jensen Auto and Marine. That's a railroad bridge there. that quickly became underwater. So the first apparatus there was our rescue with Lieutenant Mokin, and then I pulled up shortly behind the rescue, and then Chief Galbraith, or past Chief Galbraith, and Lieutenant Kellogg were behind me in our utility truck. And after that, the road became impassable. So we had no ability to get resources anywhere from Monroe or from. I'm sorry.
Oh, you did? Okay, good job.
Oh, go ahead, continue on.
All right. So we had no additional resources coming from either the Oxford or Monroe directions. As it turns out, by the way, just to make it clear, turns out this was a Sandy Hook call that address is actually in Newtown. We did end up with Sandy Hook, Hook and Ladder, Botsford, Norwalk, and some Monroe guys. I think that was largely there. We had some others too that are escaping me at the moment. I'm sorry about that. We had some significant water. The river had jumped its boundary, or jumped its banks. And at the end of the day, there was a car. There were two cars actually in the front yard. One of them actually ended up out in the middle of the lake. So, obviously, life safety was our
move on. Jeff,
sorry?
move on to the meat and potatoes of this, just so we can keep moving.
Okay.
In terms of, you had people in there. How did you get them out? What did you end up doing?
Okay, we had three. Sure. We had three victims inside. We were worried about the stability of the house. Things got really scary from my perspective when trees started coming down on us. The trees fell on the house next to us. We considered ladder trucks. The big challenge we had there was that house is below 34, so it would have been a downward deflection and too far for the ladder to reach. I
have a picture up there of the house. So
right, we're standing at that moment. We're sort of standing at the edge of the water. We're probably 15 feet, 20 feet below the road, right behind us. So the ladder wasn't going to reach. We were worried about bringing the ladder down because we didn't think we were going to. The ground itself was soft, and we didn't think we were going to be able to get a ladder down there and close enough. And once the ladder came down and got stuck, we were literally sunk at that point. We wouldn't be able to get it out. We were really in trouble. We tried. We came up with lots of ideas. When I first got there, we thought about direct rescue, and one step in, you realize that wasn't happening. And it was what I did find interesting was everybody who, as they got there, said, "Yeah, no, we can rope up and go." And keeping them out of the water was always a bit of a challenge. But the chief from Norwalk was a huge help in that, in terms of nobody's going in the water, right? And that was really good. We kept trying to get swift water and other resources, and we just kept trying to problem solve. To try and get different ways. Swift water wasn't available. We tried NuStar. They don't do swift water. Deep water trucks. The conditions were deemed too unsafe to make entry. That they were afraid that they would float away. Trumbull sent up their MRAP. That just got there too late. We had the chief of Sandy Hook there, and he had access to heavy equipment, and they were able to bring us. They got us that lull and an excavator. And what we did was we moved the lull to more or less right up against that car and extended it straight out with Chilla and the other firefighter, I believe, from Norwalk there, and we were able to effect the rescue that way. What was interesting was we rolled that out, and then we put the excavator. I don't know if you can see the excavator on that picture, but the excavator right behind it, pressing down on the back to make sure that we didn't have it falling forward. The only casualty was some life safety rope. Otherwise, that was it. We successfully got the three people out, the dogs out, and it was probably the most challenging incident that I've ever been involved with, because the resources that we were making it felt like we were making it up as we went, because swift water is not something we're really trained for, and this was a big yeah, there was a lot of water moving. As I said, there was a car behind that orange car that got washed completely down the culvert. And what we were worrying about was, you can see on the side of that house, was it was starting to buckle. What we were worried about, and that house is sitting on a stone foundation. So we were worried about either that wall collapsing or the house itself actually coming off its foundation.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds
Right.
obviously
And we
dicey,
did
but
go as far as thinking, and trying to think about air resources too. That just never materialized.
yeah, I'm gonna let Joe talk about that. I know we talked about that a little bit earlier. So, with
I'll let Joe deal with that.
yeah, in a what other resources, and then we can talk about where those ended up. What other resources were you thinking that never ended up getting here?
Um, that was I'm just looking at my list, right? Ladder truck, swift water team. We just couldn't get one. Newsar replied they couldn't do one. Right, the
So
deep
for
water
those,
truck, the MRAP.
I
The heavy
actually
equipment would
no,
work.
I actually misheard Jeff when he was talking with me yesterday. So when he's saying New SAR, it's with an N in front as in
Yeah.
Nancy, and that's Newtown Underwater Search and Rescue. So they're
Yes.
very good at scuba boats. Those
Right. Yeah.
things don't have swift water assets at
No,
this.
they do not.
So
Right. So, and as it turns out, we were pretty inaccessible for quite a period of time. And that I think was probably the bigger challenge. The fact, you had Joe and the guys at the main staging point trying, to move heaven and earth for us. We were so appreciative of them trying to get us stuff. It just, eventually it worked out, and, we're really pleased with the outcome. But, I think the whole Monroe team really worked, worked well.
Joe, do you want to touch on anything that he might have missed, or not missed, but that you had, or I'm just looking if I missed any. Joe, if you're talking, you're muted.
Oh, here's a good picture, right? So you can see how we've got I don't know, it hadn't been extended yet, but we've got the excavator pressing down, you're holding down the back of the lull. And, we had, the guys were suited up in the Mustang suits and with PFDs and ropes. But, the goal there was hopefully that we just didn't end up with them going through one of the culverts.
Yeah.
But, ideally we, the goal was not to have anybody in the water.
Well, obviously. And there's a lot of we're not going to talk too much about PPE this year. We talked about it last year. So if you're interested, the question about PPE, I will pose to the members. But in terms of like the right PPE to wear, we did a seminar last year on water rescue, and there was a good part of it on swift water. But the bottom line is the Mustang suit's really an ice rescue suit. It's not a swift water suit, and I know we wear it because that's all we have. But just realize the hazards there, and really, if you're going into swift water, you gotta have some sort of a breakaway, right? Because that's one of the biggest hazards here, is getting stuck on something and not being able to break away from that. So, Joe, I see you're unmuted now. So, what were some of the assets and things like that you wanted to discuss?
Oh no, I just want to be clear. I didn't call for a helicopter.
You what?
I did not call for a helicopter.
Okay. All right.
No, but to his point, again, I tried like hell to get him anything and everything that we could possibly think of. Like I said, the big excavators I thought would have been a good idea. And they were there and they were unloaded. And at one point, there was only one there. And somebody from the town of Monroe decided it was a good idea to start returning assets that we were requesting into town. But no, again.
All right. Awesome. Well, Joe and Jeff, thank you very much. You guys, if you're hanging out and you have anything to add when Greg comes in, great. If not, if you got to take off, that's awesome too. Thank you so much for joining us. Greg, your turn. I know you're there, so.
Yeah, I'm here.
Yeah, you sound so excited.
Yes, I'm very excited.
I know you are.
Yeah, so I like Joe alluded to earlier, I was at home and it was sunny in Trumbull. It was nice.
Do you have your video on? I gotta find
I do.
it. Okay, then I gotta pin you to the front or whatever. Continue talking. Go ahead.
Oh, all right. And Joe called me and it was sunny in Trumbull, and he basically was like, dude, I need help up here. So I started an engine company up, and once I got my radio switched over to Monroe, I realized that something very different was happening up on their in their town and got up there. They sent us to 2 calls straight away. And then I managed to make my way to where Joe was at Massac. Um, and I did a face-to-face with him. And that's when I called for a crew on my aerial scope to come up and help us out, specifically with Mustang suits and water rescue equipment. And that's when I requested the MRAP from Trumbull Police with their dive team, because I know they have equipment for swift water and everything, but that is not a quick deployment, because we requested it and it had to run up the chain of command all the way to the chief and then back down. So that took several minutes for them to even get the approval, and then to find somebody with a CDL within the police department to drive it was another issue. At that point, they had a townwide command set up at their firehouse, and that firefighter had to leave due to an emergency, I believe. Joe, if I'm misspeaking, please. But I think it was an emergency at his home. He had to leave. So Joe asked me to get there and take over for him, which, happy to do whatever's needed. Got to the firehouse and had a very hasty handover on that command, and took over. And then for the next 15 to 20 minutes, I pulled in a couple of the senior members from Monroe who were at the firehouse that I know. And we just started trying to get a handle on what resources were called, what resources were coming, what radio channels everybody was working on, where staging was the EOC open, and all of these things is what we worked on. And it was a struggle for 15 to 20 minutes to try to start getting everything straightened out. I think radio communications was probably one of the biggest issues. At one point, a Trumbull PD supervisor came up into the Monroe firehouse, and he had lost communication with his police officer, so he was concerned, but luckily we had communications with the firefighters that were with them. But there was a lot of resource requesting going on, and I think it created some confusion, and it was hard from like an incident command standpoint. Like, this was like the call to use NIMS with a resource officer, a staging officer, an incident command, and kind of break that out and flow that out. And we tried to get there, but everything started winding down as we were trying to set that all up. But Joe touched on a little bit. We were requesting resources based off what fire units were telling us, but there was another agency within the town of Monroe who kept canceling those requests because we didn't truly have a unified command. We had a fire command. We had multiple commands at one point, all calling for different resources. And I think that created some confusion on our end, but we got it straightened out, and we did our best to work with what they had. One of the struggles I had personally was not knowing the town of Monroe that well. So when people were calling for requests and information, that's why I grabbed a couple senior firefighters from Monroe and had them stay with me so that they could help me with questions of that nature. But
Really not to put you on the spot, but break it down. When you say unified command, for anyone that doesn't know what you mean, what would you have liked to have in English happen better?
I would have liked to have the highway supervisor, the police supervisor, the fire supervisor, all in one central location, so that all of these requests that were being made were flowing through one channel or one person. So that, we called for Trumbull Town Highway equipment for a very specific request for a tracked excavator and a tracked bulldozer. We made those requests, and those were then canceled, not by the fire side. And we thought they were moving our way, and it wasn't until somebody was like, no, those resources got canceled. So we had to go to plan B to evacuate some residents from another house because, things happen. I think in a large incident like that, you have to have all your emergency services reps in one area. And I will say that it wasn't an issue on the fire side doing that, as we normally find out in these situations. I think we did a good job of it. Eventually, we got a handle on it. And then accountability was a big thing. Uh, we trying to use phones and radios we could to get accountability on exactly how many people were in the MRAP, how many people were in, Norwalk sent and all this. So we had some type of list at the command post at the firehouse.
Yeah, I mean, and again, you came into it much later, so that I'm sure played a part as well. And you're having to pass command from one, this isn't a California wildfire where it's going to go for days and you pass command from one person to another. So a lot of challenges. For you, what were your big takeaways in terms of, you know,
My big takeaways is I'm working in my town right now to try to run like a training event. We don't do a lot of training at the emergency management side, like getting everybody into an EOC and running a large scale incident like this. So trying to trying to work and train on that from the command standpoint, not the operation standpoint, but getting all the players and doing that, establishing radio channels. So we know exactly what radio channels like we're going to tell people to come on, but it's already, it's already predetermined. We're going to use UASI because we're on the state course system. The UASI is a great talk group to use. Our dispatch center is able to monitor several of the UASI channels at their consoles. So we'd be able to break out different sectors and groups and divisions onto UASI channels if we needed. And I think every community should really try to plan that out right now before they have to get into this situation, because we were operating probably on 7 different radio channels at the height of that thing. Town Highway was calling the command post, Trumbull Fire, Shelton Fire, Monroe Fire. Joe was on UASI with the mutual aid. There was a lot of moving parts going on with communications, and that's my biggest takeaway is having a predetermined radio plan. So
good to know.
the last thing I'll add to the group is every region has an emergency planning team, and we just pushed, as a result of this incident, we just pushed through and got approved a grant to do swiftwater rescue awareness training in Region 1. So in the spring, we're going to have 4 deliveries of swiftwater awareness training. There'll be 2 daytime deliveries and 2 evening deliveries, and it'll be free for anybody who wants to come up and check it out. We'll have sign-up sheets that go out, but I think we all were not prepared for swiftwater. I saw water that was frightening to see when I was up in Monroe, like things I never thought I'd see in Connecticut. So keep your eyes out for that training because it'll be beneficial.
And I'm not running it, so that's not a plug.
No, sorry, no, it's not a plug for Flash Fire at all.
No, thank you very much, Greg. If anyone has any other questions for Greg, let me know. Otherwise, we're going to move on to Chief Pelletier from Oxford. So, Scott, if you want to unmute yourself and video yourself.
Yes, sir.
All right, awesome. So just give us a quick intro on yourself, and then we'll get right into it. You were in the EOC, right?
I started out on the ground, boots on the ground, and then I trans over into the EOSO.
That's even better. So give it a quick rundown on yourself for everyone that doesn't know you, and then we'll get right into it.
All right. My name is Scott Pelletier. I am the chief of the Oxford Fire Department, which is made up of 3 fire stations. And that particular day, we, basic like everybody else, thought a rainstorm, we can handle it. Normally, we spend a lot of time on the Housatonic River during these rain events, but this one here became very more challenging. We had several major rescues going on at the same time. We were fortunate during this event that we had over 75 firefighters that participated in it. And we had two major rescues going on at the same time, one on Route 34, rescuing a person that had left his residence and then returned to go get something. And we had to go in and get him. He was clinging to his trailer. Firefighters deployed there. They went in on a boat and ultimately ended up almost turning over in the boat and using a payloader to get the boat and everybody back to the shoreline. During that event, we lost the Route 34 bridge. And at that same time, we were doing some major rescues on Route 67, which normally doesn't flood, but that's down by the Brookside and up near our fire station on Oxford Road. And we had to do a hands-on rescue on over 87 people from vehicles. And I did send you some photos, Dan. If you get time, maybe you can
Yeah.
post those up.
Yep.
We did lose 20 bridges throughout town, a majority of them in the Oxford Road area and culverts. Two firefighters were performing a rescue on a car on Route 67 that was not in the beginning, not in a um, very particular situation, but the meaning of flash flood is what we really experienced. The water rose a foot in a matter of minutes, and firefighters were swept down the road. They were clinging to the guardrails. The victim, unfortunately, was unable to be grabbed and perished during the event.
Yeah, I don't want to minimize it. I mean, you guys are lucky, lucky, but you easily could have had a line of duty death or two.
Oh, absolutely. So the firefighters all were rescued. One of them was pulled because he was on his safety line and clinging to a guardrail post. He was pulled back. He needed to get some medical attention, so we needed to get him, but we had to carry him through the woods to get to the fire vehicles. The other one, there is a good photo of our high wheel vehicle that Monroe and Stevenson did request, but I denied the request because of what was going on in our town, and I don't like to do that. But we were in dire need, something we've never seen before.
I'm scrolling
So
through all the photos as you talk.
that
So everyone
that photo that's posted now
Yep.
is they're grabbing the last firefighter that was clinging to the guardrail. Unfortunately, that's me standing there next to the sign. My car is up on the hill. I had to walk through the woods to get on a rescue truck to get out and then get back to the fire station. Um, and that was a challenge in itself. After they got the first firefighter on the engine, they returned to the firehouse to try to get back to it, and they made it through one of our small bridges. And as they crossed the bridge gave out. But they were fortunate enough to get all the way across it. They were able to get the firefighter to the EMS behind the fire station, and our fire station was flooding at the time.
Hmm.
Our rescue truck, we got back to it, got on it, and we had to find our way back to the firehouse. Once we saw that bridge that had collapsed, we had to go through our golf course. And unfortunately, when we went through our golf course, we would have never thought there'd be 4 feet of water in the cul-de-sac. And the truck waterlocked, so we had to get it towed back by Public Works to the fire station, and then I set up the EOC from that point. We used the firehouse because that's our backup EOC, and it was easier for us to continue to work out of there. So we had the challenge of running over 90 calls during the event, but with losing all the bridges, we really had to step back and say, all right, how are we going to get to where we got to go? During this event, we had a report of a structure fire. We had to have Seymour come in and assist us, and they had to come around through some back roads. And we were fortunate the drivers were able to get to the incident. It turned out to be a propane tank that came loose at a residence and was just leaking propane. They were able to quickly handle that and get back into service. But when you get into the ELC operations, you have to establish, you have to have everybody there so everybody's on the same page. And I believe we were pretty fortunate that day. My assistant chiefs were all in town, so they were able to handle the operational level calls throughout town as if they can get there. There was sometimes one of my assistant chiefs was blocked. The road, there was a mudslide in front of them, a mudslide behind them with people had to wait for loaders to get them out. Um, and we had quite a bit of that going through the town. So as coordinate with Public Works, we lost our PD, lost like 7 cars because of where their station is. They flooded out. We had to bail them out and get them out and get them back on the road. Our Public Works was a lifesaver. They were able to get us get roads open and get things going on. The Public Works director, came down to the EOC and we were able to coordinate immediately. We asked the first selectman to declare a state of emergency, probably 2.5 hours into the event, and we were able to get that done, which then for getting restoration and recovery back, we can avoid bidding and all that. So we immediately just contacted contractors and started scheduling them to come in at first light to start making repairs and getting a good handle on what was going on so we can get some roads open. Public Works, anywhere they can open a road, they got it open relatively quickly. During the event, we had a party at our Jackson's Cove, which is our town beach. We lost the roadway there relatively early during the flooding. And we had 140 people originally down there. Some of the young lifeguards that were there, and we were in contact with our park and rec, contact with these lifeguards throughout the whole thing, trying to coordinate. The young kids took anybody that can possibly walk through the woods up to a residence there, and then they were all calling and got rides out of there. From there, there were still, I believe, 40 people and some young children down at the beach, and that's where USAR came in. They happened to already be in the town of Southbury performing some rescues. So they came up and by 10 o'clock at night, they were able to get them all out by boat and bring them to a shelter in Southbury. And then they were picked up from that location. We did have Bridgeport try to make an attempt to get into our town with their high water vehicle. But every passage we tried to get them through, they couldn't get through. There was one path on our Chestnut Tree Hill Road, Route 42, that runs between Oxford and Beacon Falls. Half of that did wash out. It's kind of a drainage pipe. And they didn't want to make the attempt to go over it, but that was one of our main ways to get people in and out of town. And, when we needed to get to the hospital, get people to the hospital. But we did have very good coordination. We didn't call in Eversource because we weren't really having a big power issue. So we didn't have Eversource bring a representative to our EOC. Our first selectman was there. Our Public Works stopped in and out because we have a small Public Works. It's hard to keep them there, but we have a very good relationship and we're always in contact with them, and they worked very well for us. And it worked for our recovery for the town. I mean, during that event, we lost 20 bridges. 9 of them were completely destroyed. And some of those were culverts. 17 businesses were destroyed, 20 homes along Route 67, 100 homes throughout town. 5 of them completely destroyed. And you have a photo, I believe, of one of them.
I'm going to put it up there right now. As you were saying that, I was putting it up.
Yeah. As I said in the beginning, 87 people rescued from vehicles. We had 5 rescued from homes. 19 were removed from the Brookside by our mutual aid partners from Beacon Falls. The 40 from our Jackson's Cove. And then our issue is we had to shelter people because we were moving people and people couldn't get anywhere. So we ended up sheltering people at our fire stations that are not normally shelters. We had 40 people at our center fire station that was taking on water. We had 9 at our Quaker Farms, and then we had 5 at our Riverside station. But with our moving people from the Route 67 area, we were cut off. We couldn't get down past Brookside, and we couldn't get back up to the fire station. So I did send some photos of, we had a gas station where we moved 140 people from between the firehouse and the Brookside through what we have as Corey Walk.
This?
Well, this one here shows you how fast the water came up, because we're performing water rescue. We're like the rest of you. We all have just Mustang suits, ice rescue reels, and abundance of ropes, basic life jackets. A lot of that, because there wasn't a lot of water around those vehicles when we got there, was out on the ground getting set up. We lost probably 90% of our water rescue gear from the center fire station during this event. It got washed down the river. But there was no water around those trucks when we started, and by the time we left, it was over the bumpers. That rescue is the one that we had a tow once we got into the golf course. The engine behind it was the one that transported the firefighter that needed medical attention to the fire station. But that one that's in the floodwater making that last rescue from the firefighter, that one moved 3 trips of 19 people on top of the truck to the Corey Walk stopping plaza. We had to shelter those people there. The firefighter on that truck was one that was clinging to the guardrail during the event. So he never had any downtime until about 4 o'clock in the morning. He was at the Corey Walk coordinating, trying to shelter the people, getting them coffee, getting them, blankets and stuff from wherever they could. The owner of the plaza and the apartments, we have almost 170 apartments in there and 2 buildings. The owner of that opened up the common areas. And he also got permission. There's a daycare there. He opened the daycare up. We were able to bring the people that had kids to the daycare and shelter them in there. We sheltered people in the apartment buildings until we were able to get them out. During that time, we had a report of a second rescue. We had a female clinging to a signpost down between the Corey Walk and the Brookside. She was in 5.5 feet of water hanging onto a post. They tried everything they could possibly do with that high water vehicle to get to that person, but it just was not in the cards. That the truck was under more water than it needed to be. Why it was still running, we have no idea. We ended up putting $100,000 into it through the insurance to keep it on the road. But these are all the things that had to happen. We had to shelter people.
Yeah.
Now when you shelter them in your firehouse, you have to feed them. We were fortunate that we had supplies in the fire station for firefighters, so they we're feeding them and giving them whatever we can possibly do for them there.
Yeah.
And
But
all that
go
ahead, sir.
finish up and then we'll.
All that coordination, we ran through our EOC, which basically was the firehouse.
Well,
we had one.
You just mentioned it. I just wanted to go back to the EOC. So, Emergency Operations Center, but a department's on this and says, what do you have in yours? You say you have a main one, a backup, but like if I'm setting one up for my firehouse, what am I putting in there that is going to actually help me for this? Like what if I have this room, what am I doing?
You need to have communications. You need to have internet. You need to have fax. You need to have phone lines. You need to have an area. And ours is very small. Don't think it's some big. It's not a Bridgeport or New Haven or Hartford EOC. And you have to have places for people to set their equipment up and be able to coordinate. What are we doing? How are we tracking it? Have screens so you can see what's going on. Have your communications. And our EOC, we can talk to every single one of our mutual aid partners. We have a state radio in here. I won't use the acronym, but we have a state radio in here so that we can communicate with them. We have every frequency band in here, including aviation. So if we do have an aviation event, we can talk directly to the tower or the aircraft in the air. And we don't have all that at our backup EOC, but we have to have a second one somewhere where we know where we can set up and really make things happen. But we have a majority of that stuff there. Where it's kind of in a lower hole. Our EOC is on top of the hill at our public works yard. So we have our EOC, we have our emergency management storage facility up here. So all our supplies, our cot trailers, our traffic diversion trailers, our bottled water, our MREs, also keep some of our bulk spare firefighting supplies in there, air pack, masks, gloves, hoods, medical equipment. We have medical supplies that we got and keep in there because of when we had COVID. So, those are all the things for emergency management that you really need.
Mhm.
I mean, again, we're not a big city, so
Oh,
Bridgeport, you go in, they got tables, monitors, screens. Everybody's got a laptop. Everybody's got a phone. We're a small town. We open it up twice a year for lucky, and it's usually for flooding along the
mhm.
Housatonic River.
So
And
flooding's not out of the realm, but this was beyond anything you've ever seen before.
I've never seen this. I've been in Oxford now for 45 years, chief for 39, and this is the first time I was scared.
Yeah.
That
Okay.
water was angry. I
Yeah.
mean, we've dealt with the Housatonic flooding on Route 67, but nothing like this. When you see that water come up feet at a time,
Yeah.
and I look at Route 67, and you got 3 feet of water on Route 67. That's impressive.
Yeah.
And you know, takeaways from it, not the right equipment to do what we needed to do.
Mhm.
We were in the process of when our high wheel vehicle is coming up to be replaced, but I think some thought into that is that we're probably not going to do that. We're going to do some modifications to it
Mhm.
to make it better, extend vents, extend air intakes so that it can manage the water better, um, and work for us. We use it in the snow.
Yep.
So, we'll be looking at that more and more in the future. We've had to replace a lot of our gear, so our life jackets now are universal. They're made for swift water, ice rescue, all that. Our helmets that we're buying are universal. They're good for ice rescue, swift water, confined space, because we run a confined space team,
Yep.
and we're starting to build these universal things. And we are starting. We are tomorrow night having our first swift water awareness training session. Uh, we deal with it, but we've never dealt with it before, so
Mhm.
it's something that we feel we need to really do.
Absolutely. So a couple questions from the viewers, if you will. Did you call in, or was there thoughts to call in any additional resources more from the Waterbury area, since Monroe had called in a lot of the
What's up,
resources from
brother?
the lower Fairfield County area?
Our
So fun.
Bridgeport was the first one to call because we knew they had a high wheel vehicle
Okay.
and they were out on the road. Um, so we called for them, and when we called for USAR, we got Norwalk and all that. But this all happened like quick,
Yeah.
you know. So we pretty much handled it on our own, and we had Beacon Falls come in, we had Seymour come in to assist, but Seymour ended up going underwater down along the Route 67 corridor near Claridge's Village, and where the water was up to the ceiling tiles in some of their buildings there. So um, we were fortunate that day. We had a lot of people around, a lot of people
Mhm.
on, so we were able to manage that situation.
Okay.
Um, you know, Other takeaways from it, we had one of our Captain Blood after the incident. August was a bad month for us. We had 6 fatalities that month that we were involved in. So he immediately instituted the peer counseling and got the firefighters that were involved in the needing to be rescued with the peer counselors. And then he ran a event for everybody so that they can go through that whole and make sure that no one's having any issues. I mean, these are some strenuous times, and these firefighters, when they're performing these rescues and they got hands on and things go bad, we want to make sure that their mental health is good. So that's very important in any one of these events, irregardless whether it's water, fire, or NVA, plane crash, or anything like that.
Absolutely. Another question, do you know the overall, we'll call it, damage to the Oxford FD financially in terms of all the insurance claims and everything?
Between the buildings and the fire apparatus, were over 600,000.
Okay. So pretty pretty significant for sure.
Yeah, we had three engines of the rescue, the high water vehicle, all needed work. And thank God for our insurance. They paid for it all,
Yeah. Awesome.
and all the equipment. And we're still waiting for some of that to come in. And, again, with the equipment chain, it is, it's hard to get the stuff,
Yeah.
especially some of the specialized water stuff.
Well, COVID delays still, so.
COVID's going to haunt us forever.
Um, so if anyone has any questions for Chief Pelletier, he rearranged his schedule tonight to be here to do this. So I really appreciate that. I think it was very insightful and a main part. I knew obviously from where I am, the Monroe side, and I knew the rescue from, the Brookside rescue, but talking more, understanding how impacted you guys were probably on a larger scale than Monroe. Monroe had a very finite, dangerous area. You guys were a little more widespread. And I think it's very worth pointing out what Chief McNellis said before, which is that probably helped everybody. I mean, not that Oxford was overall, but the state didn't have it wasn't 16 inches of rain statewide. It was
Right.
a couple miles by a couple miles, which was very, very bad, but it allowed the mutual aid to come in from the outside that area.
Right. Being very localized. Absolutely. Same thing when like the tornado came through or stuff. It's not like the major snowstorm that came in where the whole state was buried with 40 inches of snow. You can't get anywhere. So yes, the localization of it was the key to the whole success for a lot of people.
So kind of an impromptu thing tonight, but Robert Kenny has chimed in and we've been going back and forth a little bit on chat and based on some of the not questions, but issues of communications and multiple people putting things in chat. Rob, if you want to unmute yourself and come in and just kind of explain a little bit of what you talked about with the communications, I think that would kind of tie everything together pretty well to round out tonight.
Yeah, sure. Thank you for this opportunity.
Yeah,
and
so introduce
I'm glad we
yourself
joined.
and take it away.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I hear you perfect.
Okay, perfect. Thank you for putting this on, and I'm glad that myself and I know one of my colleagues, John Field, is on. So with regards to the radio communications, I heard some people referencing UASI, and some individuals don't know what that is. And UASI is basically a slang term that's used for the 700 megahertz radio system that the municipalities in Demis Region 1 actually purchased using a special grant fund, which was referred to as UASI, the Urban Assistance Security Initiative grant monies. These are designated areas by the federal government. We did have several year cycles. UASI designated areas in Connecticut at one time or another have included the Bridgeport, Norwalk, Stamford area, which basically translates to Demis Region 1, the New Haven area, and the Hartford area. Or before my time here, even, it was actually as I was coming in, the UASI area here in Region 1 decided to invest the several $1,000,000 they were going to be receiving into one project, and that was the 700 megahertz radio system, because interoperability is always an issue in all these emergencies. So over a period of several years, they started down the path. First, they expanded the Bridgeport, Norwalk, Stamford piece to all 14 municipalities that make up Region 1. And then they got buy-in to spend all of that money on the radio communication system. And they worked a mutual aid agreement with the state of Connecticut to piggyback it off the Connecticut Land Mobile Radio Network, which is commonly referred to as the state police radio. The Connecticut Land Mobile Radio Network today is very robust. Some people on this meeting today may be aware that several municipalities in Region 1, in fact, almost all of them here, have switched over to that. So now they have access to a whole bunch of other interop channels and communications. But I'm not a communications expert either, and I don't want to speak out of school. But the UASI radio system is a 700 megahertz system that has dedicated fire communications talk groups, including several fireground channels. It has police talk groups. It has a special event talk groups. It has emergency management talk group, and it has a municipal talk group for every municipality, along with other talk groups related to EMS, public works. So the system's pretty robust, and it is off of the Connecticut Land Mobile Radio Network, which has actually added some capabilities to that system. because it not just subscriber units that are there, it actually has placed fixed sites into the region, and actually one of them, I believe, is up in Region 5, and it enhances everybody that's on that 700 and 800 system. So it's not, we have a lot of radio subscriber units. Several towns that are on the 800 system have gotten dual band radios and put the UASI talk groups in their own purchase subscriber units. So one of the people that leads that charge in Region 1 is Joe Gaudette, who now heads up the Fairfield Regional Communications Center and formerly was the Bridgeport Police Chief, and Assistant Chief Matt Cohen of Westport. Those are the two co-chairs of ESF2. So if anybody is interested in learning more about the UASI radio system, you can reach out to them. You can contact my office, and we can put you in contact with the right person, even in your own municipality, because all 14 municipalities have a representative on the UASI group.
Yeah, so, I'll grab your information and put that out there so guys can reach out, because
sure,
a lot of the stuff they're putting in there I never heard of. So where are you from? What's your background of this?
So my background is I am a retired assistant police chief from the town of Orange. I was a volunteer firefighter in a combined department in my hometown of not my hometown, but of North Haven. I served as a lieutenant in the fire service. And then I did 30 years as a paramedic in Greater New Haven, concurrent with my police career and into my state service. When I first came to the state, I worked in the state health department for 4 years doing EMS mass casualty planning and management, and then moved over to Demis 20 years ago.
Well, thank you for chiming in, because that communications was a big question and issue tonight. And I'm glad you could provide some insight. And we're not going to solve that issue tonight, but at least give some of the, hey, look here if you want to learn more about communication. So thank you very much for that.
I'll leave you with this. We've built out so much communications capability collectively amongst all of us here that, it's like the Bruce Springsteen song, 57 channels and nothing on. We have so many talk groups. You have to have procedures in place for just-in-time activation of certain channels and be able to, so people can know what to go to, because otherwise it can get unwieldy. And I will just say this, with this event, and John Field, myself, and Nicole Velarde, who's the Region 2 coordinator, were all activated that day, working behind the scenes to actually move some resources as well, the ones that weren't automatically just gotten from one town to another through people that knew each other, through the dispatch centers, etc. So the Demis regional offices were on the background collecting information, trying to get the size up of how bad the situation was, and we were involved in moving some of the resources that have been spoken about here.
And to call a spade, a lot of people don't care about radios until they can't communicate, right?
100%.
So
100%.
I'm probably one of them, right? Like, all right, it's a radio until I can't actually talk to where I need to go.
Right.
So thank you very much. I appreciate it.
No problem.
Everyone else, thank you for tuning in tonight. We got 56 people left. We started with about that, a little more. So I'm sure some tuned out as we went a little bit later. But I'll have this on YouTube. So thank you all for joining us this evening. And we got 2 more coming up. And if you have any questions, please reach out to us. So thank you to our participants for taking some time out to share their stories and what happened. And everyone have a great night. Thank you.
Thank you.